Hey Barbara, have you been keeping up with all the discussions on climate change?
How's it going, Alex? I've been busy lately. I don't have time to read about or engage in climate issues. I am focused on enjoying my life. However, it's difficult to ignore them.
Didn't you hear about the new renewable energy sources they are trying out? Nuclear energy is considered a potential option.
Not really. Haven't been paying much attention to updates.
There is a focus on renewable energy sources to reduce our carbon footprint. Solar and wind power, for instance, are cleaner and more sustainable energy sources.
The transition to renewable energy can be expensive and may have economic repercussions. You understand having financial wealth is very important. Some argue it's not feasible for every country, especially developing nations for whom it is important to work hard and not abandon their ambitions of economic growth.
Indeed, the initial costs are high, but in the long run, investing in renewable energy can create jobs and stimulate economic growth. Natural phenomena on the planet may become less extreme.
I'm not against it, but there are concerns about the irregularity of renewable energy sources. What about when the sun isn't shining or the wind isn't blowing? We need reliable energy, and currently, this often means relying on fossil fuels. Giving up on fossil fuels would mean giving up on many of life's pleasures. I'm not willing to go down this path.
I hear you. Recent advancements in energy storage address this irregularity issue, with batteries and other storage solutions becoming more efficient, providing a reliable backup during periods of low renewable energy generation.
Fair enough, but what about the developing nations that are still heavily dependent on fossil fuels for their economic development? They need access to affordable energy to also work towards the important goal of gaining more control, authority, and influence.
I understand this need, but we can't ignore that the continued use of fossil fuels will exacerbate climate change. We can focus on providing support and incentives for these nations to transition directly to cleaner technologies, bypassing the polluting phase of industrialization.
Yes, that makes sense. It's a complex issue. However, economic development and having control over your affairs is important.
I hear you. It's not just about one solution, but a combination of efforts, from individual actions to international collaboration. Finding sustainable solutions to combat climate change requires combined efforts.
I see. The challenge is that national policies and major energy transformations often take decades to change locked-in infrastructure and institutions. In the meantime, we only have one life and need to enjoy it.
But behavioral changes have the potential of being faster and widespread.
I get that, but it's difficult to keep up with all the new information, engage with climate issues, and be an advocate for them. Pursuing important personal ambitions must also take priority.
Sure, it's difficult, yet important to incorporate learning about climate change into your everyday routine. For example, listen to a podcast on your way to work or when you are cooking.
Do you really think that makes a difference? Aren't there other everyday actions I could take that don't take up my time?
Of course. You can consider using a reusable coffee cup instead of a disposable one, or a reusable shopping bag stashed in your usual grocery bag. You should consider unplugging your electronic devices when not in use. You can even like climate action content on social media. This can keep you informed and help spread the word by impacting the algorithm.
I've heard of people buying secondhand clothes to reduce the demand for new ones, but it seems very excessive. For me, looking good is also important.
That's an excellent idea. Cutting back on some personal pleasures to protect the environment is a meaningful change. We can take some high-impact personal actions to substantially reduce our annual emissions.
I've heard about this.
Another substantial action is avoiding airplane travel. Did you know that a round-trip transatlantic flight contributes around 1.6 tons of CO2 equivalent emissions?
I get that, Alex, but not everyone can avoid flying altogether. I live on an island, and having a holiday abroad is an important life pleasure. Sometimes it's necessary. And for those who don't have alternative transportation like me, it becomes a challenging trade-off.
Fair point. But here's another option. Adopting a plant-based diet. It's been shown to save about 0.8 tons of CO2 emissions per year.
Yeah, but it's not feasible for everyone. Some people have dietary restrictions, and others may not have access to affordable plant-based solutions. Plus, it's a significant lifestyle change. Enjoyment of food is a primary indulgence in life.
It's not a one-size-fits-all solution. However, these high-impact actions have proven to be more effective than other commonly recommended strategies. For example, comprehensive recycling is only 1/4 as effective as adopting a plant-based diet, and changing household light bulbs is 8 times less effective.
Don't you think it is mainly governmental responsibility to make changes?
They do have a major responsibility to address climate change. This requires updates to international and national legislation and increased opportunities and investment in research and development to tackle the crisis.
See? That's what I'm saying. Regulatory action is needed, not personal sacrifice. Listening to all these required changes makes me think that maybe I don't want to change my personal lifestyle because it wouldn't have a huge impact on the big companies that are responsible for most emissions. It seems a waste of energy to prioritize personal change.
In our world, most things you buy, from food, clothes, and energy for your home to your mobile phone contract, are connected to global supply chains and big companies. What you choose to buy or not influences the choices these big companies make.
I don't think that climate action coming from EU businesses and citizens alone will have a significant impact on a global scale because other countries that are responsible for most emissions follow different regulations and have not made environmental commitments. Why would we make the sacrifice? I want Europe to remain an influential and powerful international power and not give up its authority by pulling back from using fossil fuels.
Europe still has plenty of polluting activities, despite its share of global emissions decreasing over time. We still have a long way to go towards climate neutrality by 2050.
I read that the EU generates over 2.6 million tons of carbon emissions each year. That's not a lot compared to China, which emits 10.4 million, and the US with 5.1 million.
That's true, but the EU still emits 7% of the global total, which is a considerable amount, and Europe is at the forefront of global climate action. It engages in climate diplomacy at UN COP climate change conferences and has set ambitious goals for the future.
The challenge lies in being fully implemented and strengthened, though. I have my concerns about the reduction in EU wealth.
It's a challenge indeed, but Europe stands ready to lead this process. And don't forget the individual actions that you can take.
Anyway, I'm glad I got to discuss this with you. Now I'm off on a cycling trip with friends. Join us if you want.
See? You've already started. Thanks, but I have to run. See you soon.